on today? This is where you find him on Facebook. Elio, David, Iorio. For most part. He's not too active on Twitter, but that's him on Twitter. Welcome aboard. Share it if you like it. Don't if you don't. This is the Jim Fannon Show. It's pop-up edition. Only because you didn't know it was coming. Elio knew. All right, brother. Now, I think I can work this. I think I know what I'm doing. Oh my. The producer is failing badly. There we go. There's my handsome man. What the hell's going on, my brother? It's been too long.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's got to be at least,
14 years,
so
yeah.
since,
2006, I was thinking the other day. And then I've been booking lots of interviews lately, and it's kind of a way to reconnect with the old friends that I haven't seen or spoken to in a while. And the conversation ends up going something like, hey, you want to come on the show? And they're like, yeah, sure. Well, what do you want to do? I'm just, I don't know, two guys getting caught up live in public. So it's like a diary. It's just documentation for me. Like an old buddy of mine I haven't seen in a long time. I wish I could have spent more time partying with you in Calgary and wherever else we were together. Ottawa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, those are the good old days. We had a tight crew, and I can't believe how far I've come from the far left ideology I used to have to, my moderate center, right-leaning conservative values now. Man, at the last 5 years have been just a absolute growth spurt for me in my political and ideological life. Weird.
Yeah, it's funny, back then, obviously, it was kind of through the Green Party that we met and hung out a lot. I never really saw the Green Party as, I think they are more now a left-leaning party or a very leftish kind of party, but they weren't back then. I remember reading the platform back then and the people that were writing the platform and talking to those guys, and it was so, I don't want to use the word progressive, but it was so enlightened, like what they knew about monetary policy. And I remember the healthcare policy was so focused on natural health and holistic health. It was there was more of a libertarian type of sense where it was, it was protecting individual freedoms, but it was also understanding that there's a collective, and that's why decentralization was so important. It was, the idea of having, even, when we were, the structure of the party, having the center, the central kind of command and control that never really worked with the Green Party, because you had all these grassroots electoral district EDAs or whatever you call them, all the different constituencies. You had all these little groups, and they were all kind of given the leeway to do their own thing. It was, I don't know, it was just such a... just reading that platform and reading about the values and the pillars, and it was so enlightened. And then it just seems like now it's just gone into this kind of a watered down sellout version of, I don't know, a cross between the NDP and the Liberals. They lost all of that sense of holistic healthcare, and it's all gone to, heavy pharmaceuticals. Which, again, very leftist. There's no sense of people taking on responsibility for themselves and looking after themselves and making decisions for themselves. And I really, the irony of it is that, I was the one that recruited Elizabeth May to the party.
I was part of that group too, I think, dude. Including running with her, I say with her, for leadership with
I know, but I was when I was on that federal council back in 04, 05, and, Jim Harris had done some good work to bring the party to a certain level of organization, but leadership-wise, it was pretty obvious we needed a leader with some profile and some experience that was going to be able to reach the Greens and the environmental conscious people across the country. And I remember I suggested it to a few of the people that I was on council with. I was like, maybe Elizabeth May would be a good replacement. And I was working with her at the time. I had done a few things with her because, she was running the Sierra Club, and I was I was a city councilor at the time, and I was at some conferences with her, and we were, doing some things together. And then I was at an event with her in Ottawa. She was speaking, and I said, this was in 2005, and I was like, I got a proposal for you. You want to come hang out a bit after your speech? She was doing the morning keynote. It was a district energy conference. And so we were chatting in the lobby of the hotel. I think it was at the Westin in Ottawa. And I said, Green Party is really making some strides, but they really need a leader. And I said, I think you'd be really good at it. And she's like, I've been doing this Sierra Club thing for a long time. I think I'm getting ready to do something else. She's like, I couldn't leave right now. And I said, well, the leadership convention is not for another year and a half. So, you got lots of time. She's like, okay, let me give it some thought. I think, sounds like it could be a good fit. And let me get back to you. And I was like, when you do, I can introduce you to all the people that you need to know. And, so, we stayed in touch a bit. And then it was like in 2005, at the end of the year, we were at the climate change conference in Montreal. And that's pretty much when she made the decision that she was going to run for the leadership. And then she announced in May 1st. And then, the rest was history. I just figured if we had the right leader in place, we could win a seat. And if we could win a seat, we could win more seats, and we could get in the debates, and we could start attracting better candidates, and we could raise money. And I was like, we're just a leader away. That's really what it was. And we were. And she did a good job, and she won, and, put the Greens on the map in a way that they hadn't been before. But then I think we just lost in the policy side of things, like the whole climate change hysteria. Just, I was pretty involved as a kind of a climate. I was a climate change guy back then.
Activist?
Yeah, like I was in office and I was pushing, the climate change agenda. Like I co-authored the Global Municipal Leaders Declaration on Climate Change at that 2005 climate change conference in Montreal. Like it was a document that got signed on to by world mayors, like all over the world, and our municipality, the city of Toronto, signed on to it. And there were clauses in there that myself and my wife drafted that we got into this that were pretty groundbreaking things. And some of them actually are still applicable, but then the science was young back then, the models were new and seemed to make sense. But as the years went by, the more you look at the data, the more you look at what was happening versus what was projected, it didn't add up. It wasn't adding up. And you start to realize that it really wasn't a human activity. It was what is a climate cycle. We're in a climate cycle. And, the climate is changing. It's going to change. And I don't love pollution. We should be cleaning up the oceans and cleaning up the air, and we should be cleaning up the way we generate energy. And we're going to start using magnets for motors instead of internal combustion engines. We're going to start using more ground heat, more geothermal. There's infinite heat beneath our feet. Why do we need these big, dangerous, expensive nuclear reactors to make steam, which is all that they do? They just make steam. There's all this heat beneath our feet we could be using for steam. And we're going to use tidal. Like that's what we're going to use in the future. Magnets, tidal, and geothermal. Like I'm all about cleaning up the environment. I'm all about sustainable, food and clean water and farming and building and construction and transportation and you name it. Clean it up, make it efficient, make it clean and green. But this whole victim mentality and this anger about, the climate and the carbon, forget the carbon. It's not the carbon, it's the pollution. So anyways, I had a chat with Elizabeth, I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago. And I said, look, because she was having trouble. She's like, I'm not getting traction with the environmentalists. None of them are supporting me. I can't get them to, come out and support me and, participate and help me get the message out and get any traction. I was like, you're not going to inspire people if you just keep trying to scare them with this climate hysteria story. We were actually on a drive to Niagara Falls. I was driving her down there. She was officiating a wedding for a friend of mine.
Wow.
And so I was driving her. My wife and I were in the car with her. And 3-hour drive because of the traffic. So we had a 3-hour conversation. And, my wife was a counselor as well, and she was pretty famous and well-known green environmental counselor. She got on to Markham Council when she was 25. So, and she was there for 10 years after that. She was, as far as, local politics and getting actually, some things done nationally, she had a lot of success doing things that were really unheard of, like introducing the green bin. Like Markham started the green bin, and then it spread across Canada, but that was her initiative. That's where the green bin in Canada started, was in Markham. So she and I were doing a lot of environmental work together, and we were in the car with Elizabeth, and we're driving down there. And I was telling Elizabeth, I was like, if you really want to engage with people in this coming election, you could be connecting with them at the municipal level, because you've got this climate cycle that's happening. Sorry, I got a bit of cough this week. And we're going to get more ice storms. We're going to get more swings in temperature. We're going to get infrastructure failing. We're going to have issues with our roads and our water pipes, our electrical grid in particular, at the worst times. People are going to suffer and die because of it, because we are going to have more extreme weather. So we can keep complaining about, how much carbon we're putting into the environment, keep protesting at, big oil and whatever else we want to blame for it. Or we can actually start to build and focus on sustainable and durable and resilient infrastructure. So our communications, our electrical, our transportation, our water, our food systems are robust enough to withstand what the climate's going to be bringing us. I said, if you have that kind of a message, you're going to connect to people at a very visceral level, because now you're giving them real solutions. You're giving them real situations that they have already dealt with, and they can expect to deal with more in the future, and provide solutions to that, and give people that sense of safety and security, food safety, water safety, electrical safety, heat. Like if your power grid goes out, we've had it before where the grid went out for 5 or 6 days, and people were starting to freeze. It was during the dead of winter. We had that ice storm. We're going to have more of those. I said, you can do that. You can actually connect with people. That's a real resounding message that you can have. It's going to resonate with people. I just don't think she knew what to do with it. And that's not the track that she was on. And I still think that is what the Greens should be focusing on: community energy, community water, community food.
Small scale individual production of almost everything. That's what the goal should be. Like, let's get us all off the grid. Let's not have to require a grid. And do you feel like, dude, and I hear so much of what you're saying, I appreciate your thoughts on it. Do you feel like, we were, again, I don't know that that's such a progressive, seems like a dirty word now, but do you feel like we spent too much time, and I say we from the standpoint of the left, there was, in 1993, the Green Party needed a guy like me, even though I had no political experience. I was of no use to the party because I was a neophyte. But then in 2003, I ran another 5 or 6 times as an experienced, good debater that knew most of the issues, knew how to sell the left's position on it, especially things like no one was talking proportional representation, electoral reform, none of that kind of tax bads, not goods, for lack of a better analogy. Carbon fee and dividend, not tax. Like, there's so many nuances to all those policies. And I felt like when I was a good candidate, when I was, educated, experienced, and entertaining, you could always count on Fannon for that. I always, especially when you're debating other guys that are doing it for the first time, it's kind of easy. I always enjoyed the experienced guys like Jim Bradley that were beside me, or Tim Hudak. I remember I got subbed in for a candidate in Port Colborne or something, and Tim's like, he elbows me on beside the table at the debate with him, and he says, "Hey, you done this before?" I said, "Yeah, 5 or 6 times." He goes, "Oh, okay." Now I know Tim, I know him to see and talk to. He knows who I am, but I felt like The Green Party needed a guy like me. In 93, we needed a guy like me just as a warm body to run so that the party wasn't dissolved federally. That was thanks to Mulroney. I got recruited by Vesna, as you know. And then in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 8, 15, whatever those other were, 6 was definitely a year, I felt like they needed me because nobody was speaking up for the issues that the Green Party represented. Now, the left has so much representation, and now I'm not 24 years old anymore. Now I'm a little bit more, I don't want to end abortion, but I think the late-term stuff should never happen, ever, for any reason after 6 months. I'll just go there. That's pretty moderate. It's not an extreme position. I just don't want to see, and I'm having a hard time with the people in my life that are my body, my choice up to 9 months because there's no room for flexibility up on that with those people. So I felt like the Greens needed a guy like me back then. Now they don't. And now what I seem to be chirping about mostly is free speech. Don't tell me that more gun laws are going to make safer communities. Don't tell me there's a gender pay gap unless you're talking about young women actually making more money than men now before they get pregnant, before the age of when they go out of the market to have children. Don't tell me that men can become girls. A mutual friend of mine, maybe I shouldn't out her right here. Maybe I won't, but a very good friend of ours, and both of them, a couple girlfriends of ours, I was in Toronto a couple years ago, maybe. It was maybe halfway through because I'm consider myself to be green-pilled or red-pilled green. I said, I'm really frustrated by this. This is I love children, even though I don't have them. I'm like, they just fill me up. I'm borderline obsessed with them. I'm fascinated by kids. Maybe because I don't have them. I look them after them at church here and there, and I play staring contests and checkout lines. I'm fascinated by children. Anyway, I take my children's issues very seriously, especially the sex slave, pedophilia and stuff like this. And then, my red pilling helped through guys like Jordan Peterson and even Shapiro and Crowder and Gavin McInnes. And it's been a long 5 years of transition. And now I'm pretty cemented in my positions. I can be sold. I probably don't have a cemented position on capital punishment now, but I'm leaning towards more like, I don't think any man has the right to take another man's life, period. Like what we call, and I used to be eye for eye, just take the guy out. Anyways, I said in front of our mutual friends, transitioning a prepubescent child is child abuse. And they're like, oh, Fannon, whoa, you read it easy. They were really offended and shocked that I could say something so moderate and which, protects children. I don't know.
That's a really tough one, and I've always kind of grappled with it. And I did have, I was kind of connecting here because I coached kids hockey for a number of years with a good friend of mine, and it's actually his. He had a younger brother who I'd known since I was little, and since I was in high school, and I guess he would have been about 10 years old or so, and he always loved to do the Whitney Houston, and he kind of had the high voice, and he was loving doing the girly stuff. And
great, fine, no problem.
Really uncomfortable with it, and
he got uncomfortable with it.
Well, he eventually.
Oh, your friend. Okay.
Well, my friend was he was a jock.
Yeah. Well,
and his little brother was.
He had no problem with it. He was not.
Well, I don't know what kind of problem he had with it. I think he was a bit conflicted about it. But at the end of the day, the younger brother eventually did transition himself, and had a really kind of an unhappy life, and was kind of working in the sex trade, and eventually died of AIDS.
Well, I thought for sure you were going to say kill themselves because so many of those stories end up in suicide. It's almost,
the way I look at it is, he was on that path where that was the outcome that seemed like it was going to happen one way or another. You know what I mean? Just because of so much kind of torment internally. I think he was just so uncomfortable in his own skin, and he was so attracted and gravitating towards, being the girl. And he was just in the boy's body, and I always struggled with how that happened. And then I've not too long ago, I've really come to a real understanding of how that does happen. And, you know, if you want to talk about being vulnerable, here's you know, the way I see it, the way I've come to understand it. And, you know, and kind of getting back to the thing about free speech, maybe before I get into it, is that I think with the way we have learned in the past, it was very much an outside-in paradigm where information was controlled and kids were kind of fed information in a certain way, certain amounts, certain types of information, and it was highly edited, and all the, you know, history was written by the winners, right? So increasingly with the internet, where there's, you know, anybody can publish anything all the time, of course there's censorship and that kind of thing, but at the end of the day, if you really want to understand things, you have to be really good at cross-referencing, and you have to be really good at looking deep into what you're reading and looking for the biases.
Yeah.
And you want to be looking for biases of kind of objectivity and people that are looking to be truthful more than they're looking to be right. And so as I've, you know, gone, you know, down my kind of rabbit hole of investigative journalism and, you know, understanding all the different perspectives.
Well, I think you're like me from the standpoint that it's a thirst for knowledge. It's just a non-ending quest for facts.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
and
it's
opinions,
not trying to
really
command on a position and try to defend it and find, you know, supporting evidence to be right. It's about looking for what resonates, what seems to be, you know, what resonates with my deeper truth, like the truth that your heart knows, not what your logical mind, which has been sort of programmed and informed, you know, as you've come along, conditioned, basically. So what I've found is that it comes down to the ability to cross-reference and to look deep into what you're reading. And my understanding of human incarnation is that, you know, it's obvious to me now from looking at even all the science, like you can like forget even, you know, the spirituality, because it's ultimately what we're finding now is spirituality and science are one. We just never had science to show what the spiritual leaders have always kind of taught.
I want you to go back to that after you make your point.
We're starting to see evidence of quantum fields. We're starting to understand things like epigenetics and neurochemistry and neuroimmunology, and the experiments and the instrumentation and the tools are there to actually start connecting these dots and see the way that consciousness affects biology. And consciousness is not biology, but it affects biology. So you come to realize that you are a physical representation. You're a physical incarnation, but you come from a non-physical source. And so that non-physical source is consciousness, and it's outside of time and space, and it is eternal, and it generates these incarnations that come in. It's an expression. The incarnation comes in, the biology lives, and then you go back to the earth, and you know the physical body deteriorates and decomposes, and the consciousness leaves, destroyed, and then the soul basically creates another incarnation, and incarnation after incarnation, we're the same gender. You know, incarnation after incarnation, you're the same gender, but at a certain point you make a switch and you come in as a different gender. Like, that's the whole point of this exercise, is to have so many lifetimes, and every lifetime you have a different path and you have different lessons to learn and different experiences, and then they're cumulative and they all get stored in your DNA, which also is non-physical, largely non-physical. The DNA that we can see is a small portion of all of it that really is. You know, 95% of it is quantum. You can't see it, but it's there. So when you've come to the body times in a row as a male, and now it's your time for a female, you've been a male 20 incarnations in a row. Am I breaking up there?
Yeah, you're lagging just a little bit. Man, you went down a rabbit hole there, dude. Oh
now. What?
Yeah, you still got a red bar there in the corner. You see where it says connection strength?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's your Wi-Fi signal. I plugged in, so I'm hardwired now, so I'm not sure. There, you're yellow now. Oh, and there you're clear again.
Hear me? Yeah.
So you're a little broken up, but that's all right. Sometimes it works itself out.
Let me go switch venues closer to the modem. That might be better. That might be better. Is it? Any better?
Yeah, well, you seem pretty clear.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So anyways, gender confusion. So, you've been incarnated as a man 20 times in a row and you come in as a female, you're going to have a residual male perspective. But now you got a female body. So if you've been looking at girls for the last 20 incarnations and now all of a sudden you got a girl's body, you're not just going to stop looking at girls. You're still going to have, there's some residual. It takes a couple lifetimes to get over it.
Dude,
you ever heard it put that way?
No, I have. Not quite. I know where you're going, and I'm smiling because I'm thinking, what a godless heathen you are. You need God in your life at some level, dude. This universe and construction.
That's the way the whole. That's,
and I love how
it's very God laden. It's very God laden because I look at the way that, we have an environment of free will, right? God gave us free will, not to judge us, but to see if we could find our way back from the freedom to choose to do good or bad or right or not, to act in love or to act in fear, and to see if we could figure out our way back to acting out of love, right? Because God is love. So the environment we have is a free will environment. It's the only free will environment in the galaxy.
Yeah, I was kind of joking.
So it's not that it's, people say, well, why would God make things so evil or so allow for such suffering? And it's like, when you have these environments of free will, this is how, we chose to come in to be part of this game on a big, long time horizon. That's, it's not the 100-year time horizon that we think of, but it's the hundreds of thousands of years time horizon, before the earth was even ready for us, to see if we could come in, forget who we are, forget, that the creator is inside, right? If you really want to hide God from people, put it inside. It's the last place that humans are going to look.
True that.
Right? So that's what we did. We came in, we forgot who we were. We played around and we bumped into each other in the darkness. And eventually we're finding our way back. And it's really, it really is love that's going to bring us back. And it's, at the end of the day, God is love. That's really what it is all about. But you have the opportunity to come in incarnation after incarnation and put all these lives, all these lessons together. That's what pretty much all the religions, not all of them, Catholicism leaves it out, but most of the other Eastern religions especially, they all talk about the cycles of reincarnation, right? So anyways, when it comes to the gender confusion, the gender questions, that's how I see it.
I'm less concerned with it if you're doing it as an adult. Do whatever you want. Love whoever you want. Have sex with whoever you want. Within reason. But no, I have just stop picking on kids. Stop indoctrinating them. Stop giving grade 3s drag queen story time in the libraries and public libraries. And I want to be able to have the talk with my kids when it's time and bring them up the way I want them brought up. I don't need them being coached by teachers at school about very specific forms of sexual pleasure at too early an age. We dress them up in makeup too soon. We make them pretty too soon. Just can we let them grow up to be kids? You can't do anything till you're 16 years old. all right, or 18 or whatever it is. You can't drink, smoke, get a tattoo. You need your parents' consent for everything. But if your child comes to a social worker at school or a counselor and says, I want to be a girl, and they communicate that to the parents and the parents don't take them for transition immediately, then, you know, there's a possibility that they could be coming to pick up your children in this country and say that you're denying them the right to.
I know, you know, and I think that, like, first of all, the public school system is just, I could never send my kids there. I just couldn't. It's just, and it's not about private or public. My kids go to Waldorf. That's inside out teaching. It's the way, it's Rudolf Steiner. It's the way, you know, the way we're supposed to treat kids, you know, draw out their inner creativity and, you know, don't coerce them, don't direct them, just, you know, guide them along with their curiosity, and they'll amaze you. But anyways, what I think, though, actually, you know, part of the whole red pill journey is, I remember back in that time when I was with the Green Party, and when I was in office in Richmond Hill in the early 2000s, I remember I had come across an online account or a book about the Illuminati.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I downloaded it and I printed the whole thing. I had this like ream of paper, and it was like this yellow kind of paper. I couldn't really use it for anything else, but I had it. So I printed up this whole book, and it must have been like a half a ream of paper, all on the Illuminati and the history of it. And I was pretty fascinated by it. And I think I pretty much read it all. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting stuff. And I didn't really give it too much thought, but, you know, just year after year, more stuff would come back, and I'd look into it more. And, you know, and then you start to realize, I mean, it's like it says in The Matrix, there's that line where it says, you know, what is it that men with power want? They want more power, right? And so when I hear people talk about, oh, you know, conspiracy theorists, this and that, it's like, it's like, what, you think that there's not people smarter than you that have more wealth and more means and have accumulated more power in order to protect what they have and find ways to keep growing what they have? What, like, you can't think that big, because that's not your paradigm, the way you live. But people that have that much wealth and that much influence and that much connectivity, and it's been generation after generation, they control the message. They own the media. People don't understand the way the pyramid works, where you have, you know, the people on the bottom, then you have the governments on top of that, and the corporations on top of that, and the banking on top of that, and the central banking on top of that. And then at the top, you have a small handful of people that kind of pull the strings and run the whole show. Like, there's nothing conspiratorial about that at all. But to me, that's just like, it's kind of like the way a corporation runs. You got to make sure your message is right. You got to control your customer, control your message. You have to grow your market. You buy other companies that you can align to your brands and your product. And that's the same way that the world really works. You know, it's primarily now the pharmaceutical companies. You know, the media. None of the mainstream media makes any money these days. They're all propped up by the pharmaceutical advertising, and they can only print what lines up with the pharmaceutical advertising. It's not rocket science; it's data. Like, it's not opinion. It's easy to see. You can look at any mainstream media broadcast and look at their revenue breakdown. It's all coming from pharmaceuticals and farmers. Like, you know, especially when you get into, you know, vaccines. Like, that's the biggest profit center for pharmaceutical companies. It doesn't require the same rigorous testing. It's so much less costly to get it to market. And you don't even have to sell it to people. Your client is the government. If you can just make sure that you own the politicians, then you can get them to commit to buying billions of dollars worth of your vaccines. And there's no liability. So you can inject whatever you want into people. It doesn't matter what happens to them. You don't have any liability. They're going to get sick, and they're going to have to come back to you and get your drugs for the rest of their life. It's a beautiful business plan. Like, you can't, you know, that's really, and it's not like, you're going to call it conspiratorial, but I mean, those are all facts. There is no liability. There's no testing. There's no trying to sell it, with spending all this money on ads. Really, you're just selling it to the government, and they'll buy billions of dollars worth of it, and there you go. It's a beautiful thing. You just got to control the message. That's okay. They control the media. So, and then you got people talking and saying their own thing on YouTube and Facebook. No problem. We'll get the Facebook people and the YouTube people to shut down whatever's not lined up. How do you do that? Well, let's see if we can blackmail people. How do we blackmail people? I don't know. Let's see if we can get them in rooms with little kids and naked underage girls and get it all on film. Did that ever happen? Looks like that happened too.
Sounds like an Alex Jones episode.
What?
It sounds a little bit like an Alex Jones episode.
Yeah, I know. The thing with Alex Jones, and I think, he's done a lot of really good work. And I mean, the same thing like with David Icke. But I also feel like there's a fine line between getting information out there and being angry and being victim about things. So we're just protesting. I really love the Buckminster Fuller line that says, there's no point fighting against a system to try to change it. You got to build another system that makes the old system obsolete. So when I catch myself almost kind of getting sucked into some of the rhetoric and some of the nonsense and some of the, just obviously what I call lack of critical thinking and laziness, to be informed by the headline instead of being able to do your own research and cross-referencing and looking at actual data and understanding what data makes sense and, what statistics are meaningful and meaningless.
I call it
posting meaningless statistics all the time, especially about COVID cases. It's always about the case numbers. I don't know anybody who's actually ended up in the hospital with COVID. As much as this pandemic thing's going on, I know nobody. I know in this whole pandemic thing, I know more people that have had to rush their kids to the hospital because they got a vaccine.
I know more people that have
6-month vaccine, had to take their kid to the hospital the next day because it was touch and go.
I've heard more personally, more that have committed suicide or got bad street drugs and OD'd in this time, or hit the bottle so hard because of hopelessness. Then I know no one. I have a girlfriend of mine that's in Johnson City, Tennessee, and she thought she had it, and turned out she did, and it tore her up. I never met the woman. I'm friendly with her on Twitter. That's it. But somebody, I guess I consider a friend. I've never met her. She's, I know her, I guess, but she, like I said, where do you draw the line? But no, in my immediate circle of people that I know, no. And then I see the stats, when are we going to get clear on this? And we're going to stop buying into the lies that the government and mainstream media are selling us. I saw a stat the other day. I've been hearing this over and over and over, that 90+% of the deaths in Canada are in old age homes, for-profit old age homes. Guided by the province, ultimately controlled, I guess, regulations designed at some level through the feds, but the province has got the biggest play in it there, and these are big corporations that are trying to make as much money as they can. It's a huge business. If you know anybody in one of these homes, you know how much it costs them to live in one of those little rooms. And that how can it be that we're not looking after the most vulnerable in our society? And this is, that's what always drew me to being a lefty. Who's looking after the little guy? Who's protecting the kids, and in this case, the elderly? And the kids is a different context than COVID. In the COVID context, it's all we should be worried about right now. We should be putting all our protections into the elderly because they're the ones that are dying from it, and strangely enough, the elderly aren't out in the community all that much spreading it. So if we just did a better job there.
That's a tough one, it really is a tough one, because we've also got a population that's been programmed to believe that, their health is essentially random, that they don't have control over it, that it's, it's modern medicine that's, that knows everything. It's your doctor that knows everything. And
personal responsibility doesn't exist hardly anywhere with us these days.
You couldn't possibly know your own body. You couldn't possibly heal yourself. The power that created the body couldn't possibly heal the body. You know what I mean? Like when you have that mentality and people that are just like at the mercy of their
pills,
their doctors or their, the medical model, medical institutions, then it's like you're already done, because how do you get people to take responsibility for themselves when they've, grown up understanding that they have no power? Like it's a tough one. It really is a tough one. Like I feel for the seniors that are scared, and you can't, my parents are healthy. They don't ever get sick. My wife and I seem to get more flus than they ever do. But still, they're in that 70s age bracket, and they're not quite as spry as they were even just a couple of years ago. So they are a little, on the one hand, they have this sense of being healthy and of being not people that get sick. But on the other hand, they're like, well, we're over 70 and no one knows much about this thing. So it's like, it's been really tough for them. And the toughest thing for them has been, I have 2 little girls. My brother just had a boy this year. And how do they, interacting with the grandkids? It's like they just want to run up and hug the grandkids, but then they're kind of like, should we just, should we stand back and should we just shake? Like it's been confusing for the kids. Like even a day like today, my wife and I have been a little under the weather this week, and it's not like I can have my kids kind of go and stay with my parents for the day. My older daughter would go once a week, spend the whole day with my parents. Doesn't happen anymore. We visit, but it's shorter visits, and sometimes it's more outside, and sometimes it's kind of distanced, and it's just been this really kind of uncomfortable thing. And it's been tough on the kids, and it's been tough to get even the kids. When you have little kids, they got to be playing with other kids. They got to be in environments where they're able to interact with other kids, and that's hard to do these days. The libraries are closed, and the activities for kids, a lot of them are shut down, or they're just all awkward, and everyone's wearing visors and masks and hand sanitizer every 3 feet, and those kids are like, what the hell? It's it's been tough, primarily for the older people and for the kids. I saw kids the other day playing in the park. It must have been part of school, and they were playing like flag football or something. It must have been like 13 or 14-year-old kids. They're out there running around playing flag football. They all had masks on. Like, how can you run around playing flag football with a mask on? You got to be kidding me.
That's all wrong.
Like, these kids, yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
Anyways, but again, like I was getting back to, the people are on the bottom, then the governments, then the corporations, then the banks, the central banks, and then the top layer is the elites. And, even this thing, the voting in the States, the Dominion voting system, to me, it's just it's the crown. It's the British still having a long arm that goes through Canada to try to control the states, using the Dominion of Canada voting system. It's really the money system. It all comes down to the money system. I went out on a limb, and I went to court with the bank, and I challenged them on the money system, and I challenged them to prove that they actually lent me money, because I was like, you guys are making money out of thin air. You remember Steve Sinclair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember he explained it to me one day back at a party in 2005, how the money system works and where money comes from. Remember Mike Nickerson?
I do.
Remember Money and the Illusion, or The Illusion of Money?
Right.
He wrote that book, really good book, talking about how money and how it's created and where it comes from and all that stuff. So I did really deep dives into the history of money. At the end of the day, our money supply is what dictates everything. The way our money is created. The central bankers have relationships with all of even though the Bank of Canada technically is owned 51% by the people of Canada, which is unlike the Fed in the US, and all of our shares are held in trust by the Minister of Finance. So something that a lot of people might not know. But at the end of the day, it's the central bankers, the global central bankers, that dictate how the bank has to behave and act in order to be accepted internationally. So if your money, that saying, I care not who is the government. Just let me control who manages the money, who prints the money, and I can control the population. So that's really what it is. Like I see this, I've come to understand that this whole political theater of right and left really is just theater, and the real struggle is the up and the down, where it's the people that want more freedom versus the people that want more control. The right and the left is just theater for the masses. That's where the deep state comes in, right? They put out in front of you the Republicans and the Democrats, or conservatives and the liberals, as if there's some big difference there, but they're all part of the same thing. They're all controlled by the same people. Like there's a lot of Republicans that are bought and paid for, right? The ones that are not supporting Donald Trump, obviously, they're bought and paid for just like the Democrats. It's just the Democrats are a little more bought and paid for. And, you've had 2 Obama administrations that had a lot of deep roots. And then you had the George Bush Republicans, it was all that same deep state controlled administration, establishment. That's why when Donald Trump said, I'm going to drain the swamp, people thought, oh, okay, he's going to clean up the bureaucracy. No, that's not what he meant. That's part of it, but that's not what he meant. He meant the swamp. He meant these are like creatures that are, like the insidiousness of it all. You don't understand what's involved, what's at play, how things work, how it's controlled, who's owned. And he's in the like the thing that people don't, people that oppose Donald Trump or that criticize him, like those really left-leaning people, and all they can really say is, oh, he's racist. That's all I really ever hear, because he's certainly not a crony capitalist. Okay? He's not a crony capitalist.
He's not an establishment guy.
Not an establishment. He's not like a George Bush kind of guy getting his guys correct. In there, the Halliburtons and all those guys that can go kind of pillage the rest of the world, right? Trump's out there getting peace agreements signed. Trump's in there getting anti-child sex trafficking legislation in place. He's bringing troops back, right? He's divesting in war.
Walking across
all
the
those
DMZ.
Things that we complained about, right? That Obama never did. I mean, he never did that stuff. He wasn't as brazen about it as what happened during the Bush years. But Trump's been, he's been honest about rebuilding America. He's like, why did we let all of our jobs go to China and let them sell it back and sell us everything? We had no jobs. We're just consuming cheap crap from China. We've lost our economy. We don't make anything anymore.
He's been saying the same thing about China for 30 years. He hasn't changed his tune at all. Not one bit.
And he never even wanted to be president. He's like, if you go back to his interviews from like the 80s and the 90s, and they said, you ever think you'd run one day? He's like, that's not what I want to do. There's other people that can do that. That's not my thing. I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, he's an entrepreneur. He's not a crony capitalist. There's a huge difference, but I don't think people on the left understand that. They wouldn't have any points of reference for that. He's the kind of guy that's like, you should be able to, put together a project, put together an idea, create a product, and then resource it and manufacture, sell it, employ people, and improve the lives of the people in your community and in your country, because you're providing things that people need and use and want. And that's really what capitalism's about. It's not about monopolies, the big oil companies or the shale companies or the car companies. It's not about protecting those monopolistic industries. It is about supporting the little guy, the entrepreneur that can come up and make it, because they come up with a good product and they come up with a good system and they're able to sell it and inspire people, build a customer base, and build a team around them that can have the expansion and the growth and the traction. I think that's really what he's all about. He's like, forget all this war stuff and forget all about this.
Dude, and you brought up a good point.
All the deep state controlling, the money and having outside influences and all that. Let's just talk about building things from the ground up.
You brought up a good point when you were suggesting or saying, I think this is what you're talking about, is intellectual or mental laziness. I call it intellectual obesity. because it's almost like you're so fat you can't even work out, and then if you do work out a little bit, you start sweating like crazy. And this is the majority of the people out there. I think that, you know, they don't have the time. They don't care about politics. They don't necessarily want to watch every election. Maybe they don't vote. Maybe they're not political. Maybe they don't, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that is, I don't know, a majority of people, they have their own lives. Not everyone is like us, and we're politically addicted and always deep diving and intellectually curious. And so when you're pushing up against these people in your life, in our lives, they are completely indoctrinated by the sound bites of the mainstream media. And you suggested, oh, you know, Trump's a racist. There's good people on both sides. And this is how I became a Trump supporter, is because I saw so many of his quotes taken out of context and made into lies, and then repeated over and over and over on the media and through other even Trudeau, like a talk show radio host right here in St. Catharines, just perpetuating the, you know, there's very fine people on both sides and he's a white supremacist and blah, blah. And it's funny because when you ask these people, well, what do you mean? Give me an example of how he's racist. They can never give you anything. If you ask them, well, so it's Trump's fault that everyone died in the States. I get it. Okay, so he's got 250,000 people, 300,000 people's bloods on his hand. What would you have done? There's no answer for that. There's, Obama had cages. And this is the only reason I look at American politics now, is because of Trump. I never looked at it before, and it's not because I'm a Trump fan. I just gave him the room. I give myself the room to not hate him. And so I don't hate him. And I line up with him politically on some stuff. I think he's funny. He's accessible. I love the way he puts his fingers in the air because, he's the least establishment guy. Oh, I love that. Anyway, I want to keep your time, respect your time here, because I know you should, you'd rather be spending time with the wife, and I appreciate you talking to me about it. But if God is love, and the universe is love, and all the quantum matter that we can't see is ultimately love, and the answer is love. How and this is what I struggle with. I can't remember what conversation I was listening to that really had me focus in on 126 in Genesis, or I'll get it wrong probably. We've created man in our image, and that all our morality and all our laws and all our basic human rights that are given by the Creator, whether you believe in a Christian God or not, I just happen to. I'm hedging my bets. I made that deal when I was a kid. I don't want to get up there and find out all I had to do is believe and have to go down there. I say that as a joke, but it's partially true. I wonder, and I struggle with this, loving the enemy, loving the guy that's different than you. I don't have a problem with that so much. My neighbors are like that. But no, let me finish. When you're intellectually fit or curious or questioning everything, and you go find out all these facts, whether you believe them or not, or whether people believe them or not, or they're obviously just conditioned to speak things, and they can't ever get specific. So if you're a little bit more awake or educated, when you see all these things, like I told you, I'm passionate about kids' issues, about free speech, about guns, about false narratives, about the gender pay gap, about transitioning. How do you, I find all I can do is come out, and this is part of what I do, is I take my political feelings and analysis to the internet, and I vent about it. So it comes off as like bitching all the time, making fun and criticizing. I don't have all the answers. I'm not, a political party that's got solutions and here's what we should do in some cases. But I guess that's a long way of asking you a question. If we struggle so much with being love and exuding it, how do you be a critic, or how do you be constructively helpful and not fucking angry all the time? Because I find this is right now, isolation, lack of purpose. I'm underemployed. I'm more underemployed than I've ever been in the last 30 years, even as a realtor and all that kind of stuff. I find I'm not a big drinker, at least not now anymore. I'm an abuser, so when I drink, I usually drink too much, but I don't drink every day. I find myself going, fuck it, I might as well have a few drinks tonight. I mean, what the fuck? I got, that hopelessness, that lack of purpose, where I didn't drink last night because I want to be fresh with you today, but I could have got tricked with a card game with my boys and stayed up till dawn, because you're like, who cares? I got nothing to do. How do you stay in love and hopeful when you get so much of this negativity beaten on you?
Well, I think I've got some good answers for this. So on the one hand, for myself, the fact that I have 2 kids and the fact that I have a wife, we've taken this from day one as we're going to make this into an opportunity. Mm-hmm. So my wife took a couple courses that she's always wanted to take, and I just didn't have the time. She had the time. I've taken the time I've always spent time with my kids. I've taken the time to spend more time with my kids. I've taken the time to do things with my wife. Just because things have slowed down, we are more conscious of slowing down, and we're more conscious of having some time to work through some things and just talk about some things that, we didn't really have a lot of time to talk about, and become more sort of focused on certain things and just getting aligned on certain things, and doing some of these little projects that we kind of thought would always be kind of nice. We never really had the time. We did. We dug up a garden in the backyard this year. We thought, hey, let's, we're not going anywhere. Let's dig up a garden, and got out the shovels.
How important is it to get in the dirt with your hands, eh?
Especially with my kids, that's one of the things I love about Waldorf. They get them outside every day, rain or shine. They get them in the parks and in the dirt. And then, they have these ceremonies around trees, and they get flowers and bees, and my daughter can knit and sew and all these things. And
really?
She's like 6 years old. Like they have hand working stuff. They do clay, they do woodworking. They don't have a piece of plastic in that school. No. It's all wood and stone, and it's like, it's really important. So that's on the one hand, on the family side of things. And, kids keep you honest. Amen. I can't, if I can spend time with my kids, I don't want to spend time with my kids hungover.
Right.
And if I'm going to go out to a party, which I'm not doing much of these days,
right,
and I don't want to come home at 6 o'clock in the morning and feel like I'm a wreck, and now my kids are just waking up and I just want to sleep. Not fun, not cool. So I started playing soccer about 10 years ago, and I've been playing like every single week, sporadically throughout the lockdown. We were playing a bit, but I have gotten into good shape. We eat really well. I have protein shakes and green drinks for breakfast and stuff. We eat all organic. So we really do take care of ourselves, and we do that, but it's easier to do when you have a family and you have everyone kind of buying into it, right? So you're almost like, you're kind of accountable to everybody else. And if I'm going to be, we don't have TV. We cut off our cable a long time ago. So we're just conscious about what we watch. My daughter doesn't watch anything on YouTube if it's not in Italian. And we watch what she watches to make sure the energy is good, but she's fluent in Italian because of that. She doesn't watch for entertainment. She watches for education. So, wow. There was a lot in there, but when we talk about being loving, getting back to what I was saying before about lifetimes and incarnations, and I think what we're in now is people like you and me, and people that actually do look deeper and do have a sense of there's more, and there's more than what we're seeing, and the shallowness kind of gets to us, and we can't really accept it. We're always looking through the curtain kind of thing. That's an indication that you're what you'd call an old soul. It means you've had a lot of lifetimes. You've had so much experience on this planet. It's in your DNA. More. You've uncovered truths in other lifetimes that you've kind of forgotten in here, but in this lifetime, but not really. It's there. It's coming to the surface. And this 2012 period, it's interesting. At the beginning of this discussion, you talked about catching up with old friends, and I thought, what a great forum and format to do this, where you're talking to people that you haven't really talked to since before the shift, before the 2012, and now we're past 2012. It's not mystical. I guess in some ways it is, but it's also very scientific, and it's astronomical as well as astrological, where it's a very specific shift in energy. The solar system is in a different part of space it's never been in before. The planets are lined up in ways they've never been lined up before. There's different energies coming in, and that's part of the quantumness, like the magnetic. We're in the heliosphere of the sun, like the quantum energy of the sun comes right into your DNA. Like the big affects the small, and the small affects the big. So if you can be the example in your life of being that love, you're going to radiate that to the people around you. If you can be non-judgmental and you can be able to observe
please
from a neutral perspective, and you can see someone who is in their own struggle and in their own insecurity and uncertainty, they're going to have challenges in their life. It's going to play out in other areas in their life. They're going to have health challenges. They're going to have drama. They're going to struggle with different things. Everyone's got their own sort of combination and ingredients of personality and characteristics and experiences. People who are in fear, that fear will affect them at a cellular level. The worry tears you apart biologically at a cellular level. It's going to manifest in the physical. And what's happening now in this new energy is faster healings and faster demise. If you're someone who's in fear a lot, it's going to go to your weakest organs and you're going to start to have rapid declining health. If you're someone who can get into the present moment and be in alignment with your higher self, with your soul, your soul lives in oneness with all that is, which is source energy, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, that's what it is. You're directly connected. You can't separate yourself. Don't think you're so special that you can disconnect yourself from God. God is all it is. We've cut ourselves off. We've forgotten who we are, but we can reconnect and remember that that's who we are. So if you can get into that vibration, again, this is getting back to the science of it. Look at what Dr. Joe Dispenza is doing. Look at his research and some of his seminars. Look at Bruce Lipton's, what these guys are talking about. They've proven how it all really works, how our system works, how our field is, where it's actually the field that emits the matter. It's not the matter that emits the field. When you think in those terms, you realize you're an energy field. And what you're manifesting is a function of what's going on in your field. Manage your field. Be in a state of well-being, ease, presence. Be in those positive vibrations, and you're going to start to impact not just what is around you, but quantum energy travels through the field beyond space and time. You can share thoughts with people on the other side of the planet. Identical twins do it all the time. You can have one on another side of they're so on the same frequency. One thing happens to one, the other one senses it right away. How is that? Because the field, space is what connects us. It's not we always think about wires connecting us. Well, our phones have proven that we're connected by the space in between us. So what you broadcast has infinite effect. So it doesn't take 90% of the world to become enlightened and aware. It takes less than 0.5% to be broadcasting in a coherent vibration to start to shift and balance and harmonize the world around them. So if you can be that example, be it for yourself, be it for the people around you. It's not a holier than thou kind of a thing, and it's not a preaching, and it's not really that. It's just being able to be comfortable in your own skin, being at ease, not broadcasting. I know it's hard, and it's part of the game of being human. Like, you want to have a sarcastic remark sometimes. You want to point things out that make no sense, and you want to point things out that people are misunderstanding or too lazy to understand because, they're just not critically thinking. You want to do that, but you also want to realize, what do I really want to accomplish here? And so at the end of the day, there was another politician in our local circle here that was a councillor in the city of Toronto and has been a good friend of ours for a long time. One of the things he used to say was the best revenge is living well.
Amen to that.
You live well, you be the example of how much well-being a human can have. Those people that are spinning in drama, at a certain point, they're going to notice. Like, what are you doing differently? How come you don't have the drama? How come you're not all stressed out and pissed off and angry and suffering and poor and broke? And why aren't you being a victim like all these other victims? Like, victim mentality has what has to go. And that's the one thing that if we could get that out of the Green Party and go back to being that kind of a libertarian. You remember the Blue Greens? Conservatively minded, had those values. It's just the victim that victim energy just destroys everything.
Again, it goes back to lack of personal responsibility.
You're angry all the time, and it's like, get away from me.
The government owes me.
Example. That's the answer. Get good at it. Get really good at, be a master of love. Get really good at that, and everything starts to change. It doesn't happen overnight, but, and keep one more thing. Prayer and meditation are really the same thing.
Amen.
If you're going to do well in prayer, you have to be able to meditate, because meditate is where you get into present time and you kind of withdraw from all of the mental activity that's related to the world around you. You kind of go within, and from there you can listen, and from there you can understand your true desires, and you can think them and communicate them, and that's prayer.
I'm smiling because I'm sitting here thinking I had forgotten what I like most about you. You're a freak, man. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being very loving when I say, dude, you are some new age freak. I forgot, man. We need to hang out more often. Love guys like you.
I don't know. I'm not so wild about the new age thing, because I'm telling you, there's science that backs it all up. It's just, again, you got to be willing to take the time to go look for it and look at it, right? Because it's not in the headlines.
I hear you, and I'm frustrated by the propaganda that's sold to us these days, and I think that's what they do. They break us, and then they keep us scared, and then we buy stuff, and then we owe the government. Brother, just before we get out, one of my favorite videos on YouTube is a video called "A Gathering of Men." It's done by an older, white-haired, eccentric poet named Robert Bly, B-L-Y. And I think he's interviewed by one of the old 60 Minutes hosts. And he really opened my eyes about the masculine condition. And this is probably in the 70s they were talking about it, maybe in the first wave of feminism. Not that I even know the difference between the waves and stuff like that, but I know they were different ideologically. And he was talking about the loss of ceremony, how I would be described as a 52-year-old grown man because of lack of ceremony, where they are abducted by the elders, dragged basically off the mother's tit, at 10, 11, 12 years old. The mother's screaming, the warriors are, grabbing the kid and taking him across the bridge to the island where he's going to spend a year with the elders, and they kill the boy figuratively, and he comes back a man, and that part of his life is over. You don't play with toys anymore. Now you're an elder. Now you're a leader. Now you're all these things, and how that's affected our kids today. That taking the man out of the home in the industrial age. Now we've sent women into the work field, and we're not really sure about the impact of that, the fatherlessness that plagues America, especially in the Black community, so that our young boys are searching for elders and mentors, and then they get picked up by gangs, and then we know what happens to them then. And that this hopelessness, I say that almost every issue you can talk to me today about goes back to fatherlessness, the breakdown of the traditional family, man, woman, and child. And, well, we did kill God, too, figuratively. I think it was Nietzsche that lamented about that. He wasn't celebrating it. He said, so what do you think is going to happen? You kill God, you take out the foundations of a successful society that's been proven over a millennia. What do you think is going to happen when you cut all the foundations out? It's going to collapse on itself. And so Robert Bly, if you haven't looked at it, it's great, but he talks about this idea of lack of ceremony and lack of eldership and lack of wisdom that's being transferred down through the times. And I'm broken over it. I'm childless. I should probably become, I'm a mentor in some capacities to a couple people that used to be kids that are grown men now. I enjoy that, but I should probably get plugged into the younger generation a little bit more if I don't end up having my own. But you approached me at one time and we spoke about it briefly. Take as long as you need, but just in case there's fathers out there, you've got a group, a private invite-only group. Is it on Facebook? Just tell me a little bit about the work you're doing there. And all I remember is I thought it had to do with fatherless men, or maybe just men.
So, So the group's called Daddius, and it was founded by a friend of mine, Evan Hill, and his partner Scott. Well, his friend Scott, who's in Australia. They're chiropractors, and the idea, the plan, the objective was to provide a support group for men, for fathers. Just because there's so little out there in terms of resources and support for men. Like, men are so, in some ways, men are more involved with kids these days. Now that you do have a lot of women working, and you have a lot of men that would lose their jobs and women still working. So you've got these stay-at-home dad kind of phenomenon that's happened. I mean, yes, there's still lots of fatherlessness, but you have also more, like, when my first daughter was born, I was the primary caregiver for her for the first few years. Then after, a certain point, we kind of switched, and I started working full time, and my wife's been home. But at that time, I found that there wasn't a lot of support for guys. And fortunately, intuitively, I spent a lot of time with kids. I coached hockey. A lot of my friends already had kids. I've just always been good with kids. Even when I was younger, and I had younger cousins, when they were 2, 3, 4, and I was, 10, 12, 15, I was just always really good with kids. So I never felt like I was really struggling with when I was home with my daughter. But I did realize that everything was oriented towards women. There were a lot of moms groups. There were all kinds of moms groups out there, and moms in the park, and mom yoga, and mom and baby this and that. But there was hardly anything for guys. So, and we found that guys were primarily, and when it comes to looking for parenting advice on the internet, if you look at the searches, it was mostly guys that were looking for parenting advice. So we wanted it to be a place where kids, parent dads could go to, share issues, get support, ask questions, get some help. So, so they could be good dads. And it started up a couple of years ago. I worked on it over about a year and a half. I was pretty heavily involved, less involved in the last little while, but I still post in there sometimes. But it's got some really high engagement numbers. Like 90% of the people that join participate. And there's a lot of people that found a lot of value out of it. It's not for telling jokes about, here, look at how bad of a dad I am. I let my kid do this, or look at this funny picture of my kid eating too much chocolate. It's not, there might be a little bit of that, but it's primarily for, sharing real kind of information and support, and getting some tough questions answered for guys that don't really have a lot of other places to go. So it's called Daddius, Daddius, and it's where conscious dads connect, communicate, and collaborate.
Cool. So just on Facebook?
There is a website as well. I believe it's daddius.com.
All right.
But like most of the action is on the Facebook group.
Brother, I love you, man. It's been way too long.
Yeah, it has. It's been a pleasure. Really, it was really cool being able to hang out like this. And see a lot of your stuff on social media here and there, and, engage with it sometimes. Interesting times, and nice having people to reconnect with like this.
Yeah, brother. Contact information for those that want to get a hold of you.
Well, best thing for me is, I guess, email is always best. Elio.Diorio@gmail.com. I just started a Parler account. Haven't really used much of it, but
interesting.
Well, free speech, censorship resistant. I don't know. Kind of like it, so I'm gonna have a look at it, but not really full tilt on it yet.
Yeah, well, it's.
People could always connect with me through you as well. But yeah.
Yeah, the Parler is interesting, and I appreciate the whole freedom of speech thing, and I want to participate more in it, but it's not there as far as the reaction goes. It probably will be there for me a lot more once I have my final days on Twitter and Facebook, which I feel are probably not too far off, especially if I do conversations like this. which doesn't seem offensive, but I'm telling you, I'm a huge, anybody that's ever listened to my stuff knows I'm gay for Gavin. I'm a huge Gavin McInnes fan. And I say that, jokingly. Well, I still use the word gay sometimes. And I usually use it with humor. And he's been a blessing to me as far as his humor, his takes. He stands for traditional masculinity, for this idea that women are not equal to men. We're not equal. Stop trying to make them equal. In fact, we put women on a pedestal because they give us children. They're worth protecting. They're magic. They're special. They're not equal. They're special. They're above men. You know what I mean? We put our women above us almost always in protection and stuff like this. And I'm so tired of the narrative that we're oppressing these poor victims, and that women, Trudeau actually came out the other day and suggested that women are getting COVID, are getting are feeling the implications, the impacts of COVID more than men are. I'm like, what the? Just stop making these beautiful creatures victims. They're not powerless. They don't need our help. No, they need some things from us. What we normally do well as men, they will appreciate, and what we don't do well as men, they're the only ones that can do. We can't breastfeed.
I know. We're different. We're different.
Celebrate
not better,
man.
Worse. We have strengths.
I'm all for equal treatment.
We have different strengths, and together, if we can come into this kind of a harmony between the male and the female, that's the magic. Mm-hmm. When you got this separation, and we're kind of just both looking at each other like, well, you guys do this, and well, you guys can do that. We should be able to do that. We create the separation. We disempower the whole thing. There has to be a harmony. It's like when you have a band, you got the percussion and you got the brass and you got the piano. Like, one's not better than the other. You need them all in the mix doing their thing, and then that's how you can have the magic.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, where I was going with that is I find Gavin very funny, and I participated on his show usually as a caller, and I will call in with a little bit of a comedy bit. They're very politically incorrect. They're funny as hell, especially the way he answers my calls just off the cuff. And I get to release some of my humor on society, and it's tolerated in his universe. Anyway, every time I upload a clip, now I'm on my 5th YouTube channel now. I had a really successful YouTube channel over 10 years that I blew up last November. Until March, I blew it up from 200 subs to 6,000, and from 100,000 views to 3 million views in a few months, and started making some decent money. And then they just, St. Patrick's Day, done. Gone, never to return, for no reason. No community guideline strikes, no hate speech strikes, and it wasn't all my content. It wasn't like everyone, people, 3 million views were watching the Jim Fannon Show. No, they were watching clips of Gavin McInnes or Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes or whatever. Brad Pitt making, Jennifer Aniston making gazing eyes. Like, I had some really strange things go to 1 million views. Mm-hmm. And now, as soon as I post a Gavin McInnes clip, usually they're clips of me calling, being a jackass, and it's not even foul language or even hate speech or anything like that. Within, I don't know, usually a week, I've got a community guideline strike against me just because he's banned from that platform, and YouTube's cranking down on anything that is associated with him because, of course, he's a white supremacist bigot. All these, he did a segment in Israel. He was over there when he was with Rebel News, or Rebel back then. He was with Ezra Levant. They were in Israel, and they gave. He does a stand-up routine that's loaded with political humor and analysis and opinion, and it's great. And he did a segment called, I shouldn't even probably say this because we're on YouTube. It's called 10 Things I Hate About and he was in Israel. Let's just put it. And I think it was 10 Things I Hate About the MFN, right? And he was in Israel, gave it to a bunch of Jews. And he was just being like, would you guys stop complaining about the genocide? Like, come on, man. It was so like, he just overt parody, Yeah. And no one's ever seen the video because Ezra took it down. There's no copies of it floating around, but people know that he did this bit, so that they have this thing. Oh, well, he did this thing. He hates Jews. No, he's a huge fan of Israel. He talks about it all the time. But now the SPLC has deemed him a hate group, just like the Proud Boys, which he founded, a drinking club, And so he's one of the most censored human beings other than Alex Jones. You got Milo Yiannopoulos. They're all, a lot of those misfits are on his network now. But as soon as you put up something, and usually, like I said, it would be I put up a 40-second clip where they were comparing me to Copper Cab, which is a character on the show, is a phenom on YouTube. And they were comparing me to him, simping or whatever. And it was 39 seconds. They didn't swear. All they did was talk about Delphine. What's her name? Delphine, the girl that sells her bathwater on the internet. She's a YouTube star, full makeup, always dressed provocatively. And yeah, she sells her bathwater to perverts who think it's cool or whatever. I guess that's what got me taken down. Now, her channel's fine. She's a multi-millionaire from her channel. She's monetized, but I have a 39-second clip about them talking about her and me and Copper Cab and the same thing. And I got a community guideline strike. I put up a video the other day of a young black kid dressed as a cop on the parade route. I don't know what it was, but this cop had stopped his car and got out and was down talking to the kid. And I got taken down a community guideline strike for promoting violence against children somehow. So I know it won't be. I won't be long.
Well, listen. What I would say to that is a couple of things. First of all, there's going to be wild cards like Black Swan type of events, right? Things that happen that no one saw coming. And I don't know what they're going to be, but they're going to happen and they're going to change things quickly. Like this whole pandemic was kind of a wild card, right? It just came out of nowhere and all of a sudden, bam. So we're going to see more of these kinds of things. Not that they're good, they're bad, or whatever. They cause existing paradigms to break or existing institutions to break. Big Pharma is going to break. It's going to break. I don't know if it's going to be this year or next year, the year after. It's going to break. It's going to get cut right down. So something's going to happen. A couple things are going to happen. It's going to break. So the other thing is, I think the same thing is going to be with Facebook and Google. Something's going to happen. We can't have this kind of lack of integrity. The new energy is just not going to allow it. Something's going to break there as well. I remember when Facebook and MySpace back in the day, when that stuff first started and no one really knew what it was, and then it started, and then look what it became. I think that something like a Parler, because I look at, I got into Facebook so early and I got into MySpace so early, and if I had really, given it more attention, and I grew this, my Facebook following really quickly, just because of the work I was doing. I was meeting a lot of people, but I could see Parler, 5 years goes by quick. 5 years from now, what could happen and where Parler could end up? So I don't want to discount it. I don't want to necessarily put all my eggs in that basket, but I think I'm definitely going to just keep it going. Yeah. I think there could be a time when there could be a pretty big shift. So
I'm out there. I just don't want it to become a conservative echo chamber where it's, you don't have the diversity of opinion.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I don't want to just hear, I'm straight and I'm conservative, so I'm on Parler.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't really want that. But I want it to be more of a libertarian kind of a thing.
Yeah. Amen, brother. So, yeah. Hey, I hear your kids in the background. I've had you an hour and a half today.
They just got back from their walk, it sounds like.
All right, man. So, well, give my love to the wife and the rest of the family. I appreciate you, man. It's been a great
awesome catching up, and good to see you. Looking good, and well, I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yeah, next time you find an excuse to come to Niagara, look me up, or let's book a hang, maybe a little jam. Yeah, or like that.
We used to come to Niagara a lot. We actually thought about doing it again now. We figured B&Bs are probably, not so busy. So
it's the safest place.
Maybe now is a good time to take a few days away. So
Niagara Lake's beautiful this time of year, brother.
Yeah, we would always come a bit. We'd come in the fall, then we come again in the spring. So it's just been a couple of years now. So.
Yeah, hike down the gorge would be cool with the kids and the wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. How old are the kids
it's
now?
One of our go-to spots for sure.
How old are the girls now?
Planning to get back. What?
How old are the girls now?
One just turned 2. The other one just turned 6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They're doing great. They're magical. They're awesome.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
All right, brother. I love you. Enjoy
Okay. All right.
We'll talk
Enjoy
soon.
the rest of your night.
All right, brother.
Okay.
All
Take
right.
care.
Go
All
Eagles. All right. Peace out, bro.
See ya. Yeah, see ya.
Well, that's how you do that. ED, my brother. That's an old friend of mine from the Green Party days. Thanks for the time, bro. That was really cool. Yeah, we had him on way too long. It's 4 o'clock almost. PM EST. Thanks for joining us. Peace, love. Hug your neighbor, and why don't you rip that mask off while you're going for a walk and exercising? You